Hello.
Hello.
Hi, everyone, and hi, Charlotte.
Hello.
Hopefully, you will be able to hear us because we were just here having slight technical issues, but fingers crossed, it's just for us. Um, Charlotte, do you want to kick off by introducing yourself, who you are, and your channel?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. My name is Charlotte. Shocking. And I run Looking After Your Pennies, which I have been running. I am closing in on 5 years now. So it's I've been doing it for a while. Started as a website. So I have a website, lookingafteryourpennies.com. I'm on social media and I have a YouTube channel too. And I talk a lot about different areas of personal finance. But one of the big areas that I talk about a lot is sort of cutting down your spending and the whole idea of frugal living, which is significant and probably one of the most valuable skills and arts we could learn at the moment because we're as a nation, as you know, across the world, people are struggling because of the rising price of food and fuel. Pretty much everything's going up in prices. So I think that's it's quite topical what I talk about.
Yeah, unfortunately. So I think the more I talk to people and the more I watch stuff, the more depressing it gets, really, because I was watching, like, scrolling through TikTok last night, as you do before bed. I think everyone does that now. And I came across this like really depressing radio recording of this guy breaking down in tears, just going like, I'm going to freeze to death in my home and like got no help and stuff. And it was just heartbreaking.
Mm.
Um, so
I,
yeah, when I
I
was
think.
thinking about this video, I was
Mm.
like, Charlotte, it's got to be Charlotte on this
And
topic.
I'm always up for a chat.
um, should we kick off?
Mm.
Do you want to start and kick off with like your first tip?
Oh, yeah, sure. So frugal living, I think I'm going to keep it a little bit theoretical to start off with, and then maybe we can touch on the more practical in a little while. But I think one of the things that I want to highlight to people is that I think frugal living almost gets a bad rep in some regards, and I think that people think about frugal living as you have to commit to cutting back in all areas of your lifestyle. Um, so the first tip that I want to give people is that you can be selective about where you're frugal. And we are probably having, some of the options that we have available to us and the areas that we can choose to be frugal in might be limited. We're going to have, a lot of people will be watching this and being like, well, I can't be frugal on holidays because at the moment all my money's going into my energy bill or something like that. So complete respect for that. But you can choose to cut back in areas that are less important to you and live a bit more, I don't know, spend a little bit more on some of the things that are valuable to you. So as an example, um you know I I'm like not necessarily big on things like you know drinking and stuff like that. That's not something that I'm interested in. Obviously I enjoy a drink, but it's not an area I need to spend loads of money in. So for me, that's an area that I'm like, what, I can cut that out. I can cut back. I don't need to spend on that. Or it could be, I'm not particularly, you can probably tell I'm not particularly good at, I'm keeping my hair well maintained. I'm not somebody that needs to go to the hairdressers all the time. So I'm happy to sort of cut back on some of those things. Just go to a local hairdresser. And actually I can make those savings and then I can funnel them into things that are important to me. So, it's like my family. I do enjoy traveling and, having new experiences and these sorts of things. So I'm selectively frugal. So I think if you're nervous, we're not saying you have to cut you have to cut back in all areas. You can look at it and be like, actually, this is something that is valuable to me. And this is something that brings me a lot of joy. And the other thing to note on that, sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No,
The other
no.
thing to note on that is it can be seasonal as well. Like so for me right now, I spent all summer outdoors and swimming in rivers and oceans and going paddle boarding and all of these sorts of things. So for me, I was spending, most of my not most of my money, probably a very tiny proportion of my money, but most of my kind of like I guess disposable cash on, just doing things like that. I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna get a new swimming costume and a new this and a new that. And I wasn't spending a lot on anything else. But now there ain't no way I'm doing that. It's cold. So actually, I'm not spending in those areas, and actually, it's more important for me to buy things like socks and hot water bottles because it's blooming cold. So it can be seasonal and it will change as your life goes on. So I think just starting this with the idea that this is not something that has to be fixed. This is not something that you have to, it's not black and white. It's not all or nothing. It can be very subjective, and it's something that's going to change and it's going to vary depending on circumstances. And yeah, we'll get to the more practical tips shortly.
No, I think it's all really important. And the other thing I saw recently was that a lot of people confuse being frugal with being cheap, which is completely not
I did a video on that.
the case. And I think it's important to highlight that as well. Like being frugal, for example, can mean different things to different people, but also something like buying a better quality thing to last you longer, buying something that's more expensive, that's better quality, is actually considered frugal, because with things like fast fashion, for example, that's gonna, over time, you're gonna spend far more money than buying like a really good quality shirt. I saw something that made me laugh recently. It was like a picture of a new fridge that was like, oh, built to last for like 2 years or something before it starts breaking. And then it was like a 1980s fridge will outlive you, your children, and your grandchildren.
And you know what? Isn't that true? When I moved into I'm living in my first house, and we've been here 10 years now. We bought a whole load of appliances when we moved in, and some of them, we decided, we bought a washing machine, right, 10 years ago, and it was not a cheap washing machine, but we knew that was something that we were gonna, you can't not wash. Things like a tumble dryer, you could use your washing line instead. They weren't so important for us, but we spent the money. And that washing machine is still going. And actually, in 10 years, I think we spent something like 600 quid on it, which is quite a lot of money back then. But other things like the tumble dryer, I think we've replaced that 3 times. And actually, the investment that we made at the start has probably saved us money in the long run. So, it didn't feel particularly frugal when we were purchasing it 10 years ago. There was 24-year-olds with, like not a lot of spare cash. But it has been a solid financial decision that has probably saved us a lot of money in the long run.
Yeah, it's definitely something to remember, that actually cheapest isn't always best. And I think we can count that as the first tip, isn't it? It's just because something on the label is the cheapest to buy, it doesn't mean that's what you should buy. And actually, for me, one of the things that I often tell people, and some people are really good at this and know already, but some don't realize, actually, when you're buying something, say in the supermarket, like pasta, actually you need to look at like the price per kilogram or price per liter rather than the actual price tag, because quite often it will look the same. You'll be like, oh, it's roughly the same size, but actually what's inside and like the price per kilo.
And there's tip number 2. Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually I did this with I looked at the prices of things in the likes of Lidl and Aldi compared to the price of things in Tesco. And I think I picked a couple of examples, one of which was mayonnaise, right? And I was like, this is cheaper in Aldi, and it's more expensive in Tesco. So looking at their sort of like branded stuff. And actually what I noticed was the bottles in Aldi were slightly smaller. than the ones in Tesco. So, you know, like let's say there were 500 milliliters in Tesco, and these would be like 450 milliliters in Aldi. So you're probably not noticing it from a sort of, you know, picking them up. So then I was like, well, let's look at the price per liter or whatever it was, and it turned out there was like practically nothing in it. You know, like, so you know, so it can present this kind of false economy. So actually, to look at, you know, there's price per kilos, you know, the price per, you know, things like eggs, it's like price per unit or whatever, and that can really show you where the savings can be made. And you know, the trick to this, you know, when you see those yellow sticker deals in the supermarkets, they aren't always great when you do the price per kilo, and they're much, you know, they're much harder to do because they don't have that conversion. Like when you look on the labels on the shelves and things, they often they'll do that for you. So it's like 100 grams is blah. But when they've been reduced in yellow stickers, you have to kind of do that conversion yourselves and then compare it to the other things, the full priced items, to get a real kind of like comparison of those costs.
Yeah, I get infuriated with that when they, even online when I shop, when you've got the sale price, it never factors in the actual sort of price per unit or kilo or whatever it is. And I do
Yeah.
get frustrated because I don't like doing it myself. I'm so lazy.
Like, oh, I have to get my phone out and get the calculator. Mm.
So what's next on your list?
So maybe we should stick with the whole the food thing. And you've mentioned the kind of like price per kilos, and this is, so I'm going to mention bulk buying here, and this one is a bit it can divide opinion, and it rightly divides opinion, because actually it not everyone can afford to bulk buy, and actually this can be something that's quite almost a privilege. You need money to be able to bulk buy. If you have money and you can afford to buy things in bulk, and also you have the storage, because this is my issue. I do like have a small house. Like I haven't got loads of space to, you know, stock up on toilet roll and baked beans and this sort of thing. It's literally like we'll get a week's worth of stuff and that'll do. So I completely understand that there's an element of privilege that comes with being able to bulk buy. However, this links nicely to what we were just talking about with the, you know, price per kilo. Normally, the more you buy, the cheaper you get it. And also, if you see a particular deal, so there's a particular type of coffee that I like, and occasionally it goes on offer, and I'm like, we're getting all the coffee because you know there's nowhere I'm paying full price for it.
I do this. I'm like, okay, every time it's on offer, I'll buy like 4, just
Yeah.
because it's something that I do use. Or like, I'm not even going to admit to the amount of coffee that I drink now. But it's something that for me, like I don't drink a lot, I don't smoke, I don't do anything like that.
Yeah.
So coffee for me is sort of my
Your
guilty
vice.
pleasure.
Yeah.
And it's expensive now. So considering it's non-perishable, and this was actually, so I had bulk buying on the list as well, but I also had, don't necessarily just think that bulk buying is something you should always do, because I've been guilty of bulk buying. Like I had Costco membership and I would go in and I would go like Costco happy and just bulk buy loads of things. And then I'd end up throwing lots away because you end up buying so much.
Yeah.
Because you think, oh, I'm totally going to use all this, it's going to be fine. But actually the stuff that isn't sort of very long shelf life,
Yeah.
actually, was it worth it? You end
And
up losing more.
it's exactly the concept, like if you go shopping when you're hungry, isn't it? You can be like, you end up over purchasing, and then you're sitting there and there's like, you know, something going off in the fridge, like vegetables. I'm just so yeah, so no, absolutely. I think, you know, like you say, the non-perishables, also things like toiletries, cosmetics, you know, Lurel's a common one. But you know, another great one is to, you know, things like laundry detergent. Look at buying big bottles of laundry detergent. I'm doing this, but you can't see my hands. They're really far apart. You can get the big bottles of laundry detergent, or the big pods, or whatever it is you're using. And you don't necessarily have to keep that in your kitchen cupboard. You could store a bigger bottle in, say, your garage, or in another more out of the way storage area, and just keep a smaller bottle in your kitchen or in your utility or whatever it is, and just top it up from the big one. So if you're sitting there going, well, I don't want to get this massive bottle or whatever, top it up with the big one. Now, the one thing I wanted to say about bulk buying, because like I say, you need money, you need space, it's a great sort of thing that you can team up on. If you've got like neighbors or friends and family, you can be like, what, it's my turn to buy the laundry detergent, it's my turn to buy the loo roll, spread it out, and I'll keep it in my house. So I've got like my neighbor who lives over the road, she's got a garage, we haven't got a garage, and she bulk buys toilet roll. So I'm like, I'll go half these. I'll go half these on that. We both get the benefit of the money saving, and I get to utilize someone else's storage for free. But it's about being creative. You can do this in families, you can do it with neighbors, friends. So it's definitely something that is worth considering. And actually, I think it's one of those tips that is maybe one of the sort of things that our grandparents knew how to do, and we've sort of forgotten, due to convenience. I remember my grandparents would always pick up like 2-for-1s and bog-offs and all of this sort of thing, because they and they would give us the other one, and it was kind of like generous, but they were like, well, we didn't need to, and that sort of thing. So utilize those things. You can get those offers, go half on them, and then you get them for half price. So just start having some of those conversations and see who you can bulk buy with.
Yeah, I think relationships are really important to have in these sorts of times, because I think it's still not talked often enough. And I think generally, when we all started, because I know like me and you started this journey sort of similar times, in terms of the platforms.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason people are so keen to watch these things is because people aren't having the conversations with people in their lives. I think if it was just completely normal to talk about money and how much you make and how much debt you have and like what situation you're in,
we wouldn't be doing very well.
Well,
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? People wouldn't need us. They wouldn't be turning to these platforms for inspiration from ultimately strangers, that we're the only ones talking about it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I see these videos come up, these TikToks and things of people talking about how much they're struggling. And actually all these strangers are commenting saying like, I'll help you out and things like that. So if people are doing that to strangers, I think that if people actually discuss their situations with neighbors and friends, they would find that actually more people than they realize are probably in a similar situation. And people would be willing to help each other out. But
yeah, absolutely. And I get that it can be scary having these conversations, particularly when you feel like you're alone in that journey. If you feel like you get the impression that your friends are doing better than you, or your family's doing better, and they might not be struggling, but actually you could be the voice that changes that, or gives other people permission to talk about those things, because maybe they've been worrying about it too. And so I understand there's an element of bravery in all of this, but it could be a really significant step, not just for you, but for the people around you as well.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. So I've got this on my list, and I'm pretty sure you will too, and because we just had a comment on here, and it's the act of keeping a budget.
Love this one.
And I swear to God, every time I mention this on my channel, I'm like, oh my God, people are going to unsubscribe because they're going to be sick of me saying this. It's so often.
Yeah.
But it's so true. It's so key, isn't it?
We'll keep saying it until everyone's got one. So if you're the one person that's watching this and you haven't got one, we're waiting on you.
Honestly. And there are so many ways to actually make a budget that works for you. And there are, you know, sometimes I see people's budgets and I'm like, there is no way that would work for me. I would get so stressed out and it wouldn't help me and things like that.
Yeah.
So I have like one that looks 12 months ahead and I can see whether I'll go into overdraft and if I won't and all this kind of stuff because I need the big
Classic
picture.
accountant. Yeah, you got cash flow forecasts and
Pretty much. It's okay, I'm not an accountant.
yeah. So I think the mathematician in me, because that's my background, I'm, you know, a maths teacher. I'm very much like, I'm going to keep this simple. It's a one-page spreadsheet. I'm going to look, you know, a month ahead at a time. You know, I have like rough ideas of like, you know, what's happening in the future. But yeah, I keep mine very, very simple. But as you said, there are lots of different ways out there for like, you know, like doing things. You know, there's apps, you know, if you're not a fan of spreadsheets, and actually you want the convenience.
There's people who aren't fans of spreadsheets. What kind of people are those?
I know, because we're numbers people. Like we can, or you know, like we flock together, I think is the thing. But yeah, no, you know, I think there are some people that know they need to budget, but actually there's, you know, they haven't been taught, they haven't had experience, you know, they weren't raised in a household that budgeted, you know, they just haven't been exposed to these things. You can just get an app, you know. Gosh, my banking app at the moment pretty much tells me where my money's going and how much I've got left. You know, and that's a great starting point. But I completely agree with this commenter that, you know, it's about knowing where your money comes from. I think people overlook that in a budget a bit because I find that my money comes from way more places than I expect. Like every month, it's like, oh yeah, forgot about that. Oh yeah, that thing's coming in. You know, oh, there's a refund on this or whatever. So, you know, knowing where the money's coming in from and how much, but also where it's going, and having some control and some ownership over where the money does go is so powerful, and it definitely highlights where your priorities are. And I occasionally I'll kind of like take my eye off the ball with budgeting. This month is a perfect example of that because it's just like, you know, like it's still just gone, you know, just tabbing everywhere and, you know, spending it online. But actually when I, you know, I dial back in and I, you know, start looking at the figures and things again, I'll be like, why, you know, why did I spend so much on that? You know, that's not something that I'm, you know, I'm not bothered about. And I'll then go, you know what, you know, we'll tone it down a little bit and we'll cut back and we'll realign with, you know, the goals and all of these sorts of things, and just get back on track a little bit. I mean, one thing I like to do on my budget, I use a spreadsheet. Like I said, I've got this one-page thingy, and each month I'll go, you know, I don't enjoy spending this much money. And it can be something that is really, you know, in the early days, it was like, I don't enjoy spending this much money on my TV license. So I'll sack that off. Yeah, that much job.
Let's talk about that,
point.
actually.
Yeah. Yeah. But like that, I like to kind of gamify it. So highlight things I don't want to spend money on and then try and reduce it in some way or try and cut it out completely. TV license.
Yes. So this is something that I think it raises a lot of comments and a lot of arguments in the comments.
Provides opinion, yeah.
But it is something, you know, I was talking to someone recently who is not in the greatest situation, both life-wise and money-wise and everything-wise. And she sort of, well, I won't go into the situation, but started renting a new place and had a TV and was going to pay for a TV. And I was like, well, considering how much you're working to make ends meet, how much time are you going to have to watch TV? Do you need cable and all of that? Or can you just live off of Netflix, Disney, whatever? And she was like, yeah, you know what, you're right. And actually, just by that, you've got a saving of quite a lot.
Like, how much is it now? It's like 100 and something quid a year. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's if you just have like Freeview, right? Because if you want, like, so many people have
Cable,
Sky and things
oh,
like that.
50, yeah.
But I think the thing that a lot of people still don't understand is that as long as you don't actually have a TV, you're not plugged in, you know, when I had my flat, it was easier because I literally just had no TV. But if you had one, just, you know, take down the thing that's plugged to the aerial, and best thing, just take the aerial if you can, or whatever, just to make it easier
Yeah.
so that they don't have to come into your house to
Mm-hmm.
check, but you don't have to let them
Yeah.
in. But actually, literally,
It's
if you
easier than that, really. I mean, we have an aerial, but we might have boxed it in. I'm not even sure whether cable comes into the house anymore, like it was there at one point. But you only need a TV license if you're doing two things. So the first one is if you are watching live TV. So when I say live, it doesn't necessarily mean like, you know, when you're watching the World Cup, you know, it's not, doesn't have to be happening. It's live broadcast. So, you know, if you can open, you know, the TV Times or whatever and go, I want to watch EastEnders at 8, I don't know, whenever it's on 7:30. And you watch it at that time on that channel, then you need a TV license for that. You also need a TV license for watching BBC programs, like on demand. You know, so any, you know, if you've got iPlayer and you're watching that, you will need a TV license for that. Now, if you're watching ITV and you're watching that live, or you're watching that on, you know, through their ITV, whatever it is, player, I don't know. And again, you're watching things that are live and they're being broadcast at that time, you need a TV license for that. If, however, you're watching ITV, but you're watching something that was on yesterday, or you're watching something that's in that sort of catalogue of things, you do not need a TV license for that. So if you get rid of your TV license, pretty much the only thing that you can't watch is things that are exclusively on BBC. Everything else, so I watched I'm a Celebrity, but I watched it a day later on the ITV playery thing. So I still got to watch most of those things. It's literally just the stuff that's on BBC that you can't watch. And if you know, if you particularly need to see something like football, then you know you might want to have a TV license for that. And like you
go to
say,
your mates. Most people don't watch football on their own
my
anyway.
mum. Like if I want to see something like that, I'll go to my mum's. The one thing I did want to watch was Drag Race, which is on BBC Three, UK Drag Race. So I arranged with my mate that I would go round to hers on a Friday with a bottle of wine provided by me, and we would watch it there together, and it was way more sociable. So yeah, like there are very few things I actually feel like I'm missing out on. And in this world, you know, you could have Netflix if that floats your boat. You could have, you know, Disney Plus, which you know my kids love. And as a side, on this, I use my Tesco Club Card vouchers to get Disney Plus.
Amazing.
So I don't pay for that. It's like,
and Disney as well, because I think Netflix are starting to be a bit harsh on sharing, but Disney aren't. So actually, so many people share Disney, and it makes it even cheaper, and it's absolutely fine for now, at
yeah,
least. So
yeah. And
there's so
like
much
I
on
say,
there.
I just get use it for my club card points. So I haven't ever paid for it. I think I paid for it when it first came out, but that's because we were in lockdown. I wasn't spending any money on anything else, and I'm trapped in my house with my kids. So I think I paid for it then, and I was like, "This is a decent like price to pay for entertaining my children." And things like Netflix, you know, there might be something on there you want to watch, and then there's not. You can cancel it. You can come back to it. You only really pay for it when you need it. Whereas things like your TV license, things like the, you know, Sky and whatever, you know, those are contracts. You have to pay whether you're watching it or not. And if you're like, you know, if you're people like, you know, I go through these phases where I'm super lazy and I just want to watch TV all the time. And then I'll have months where I'm like super driven and motivated. I won't even watch anything. I'll either read a book or I'll be making videos or writing blog posts. If I was in a contract for that, I'd be wasting so much money. So yeah, like just go for the, you know, 1 month, subscribe, cancel, pause, whatever it is, and get all the offers that are out there. If I cancel something, like a couple of weeks later, they'll be like, come back, it's £1. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's very, very true.
Spotify send me all the emails. Like, come back. It's only a tenner. Like for
This is one
big
actually,
jobs.
just as a quick side note before
Mm,
I move on to the next tip, but actually, when you put something in your cart and
mm.
don't check out, quite often
You get a
they'll email
voucher.
you after and be like, actually, I get this a lot. There is a website in Poland called Zalando,
Mm,
um, and it's like massive clothing store.
mhm,
And because I have an account on there, what I tend to do when I'm bored is like browse through, but then I don't check out, and I'm just like adding things
mm.
to cart because I'm like, at some point I'll buy this.
Yeah,
And then I'll just get emails going, this item you have in your cart has been like discounted, and I'm like,
yeah.
has it?
How
Interesting.
sh Yeah, I knew this would happen. I love that,
um,
yeah.
So this is an interesting one because I've
Mm,
picked this up through speaking to neighbors, and I'm wondering
mm,
whether you've done this before yourself, whether you've seen a difference.
mhm.
It's using your curtains and blinds for keeping heat in or out. So, like in the
Mm,
summer, closing your blinds during the day to stop the heat sort of getting into
yep,
your house so you don't have to cool it.
mhm.
But actually, in the winter, doing the same to keep the heat in.
It's like a blanket for your house. That's the way I think about it. If there's any drafts that are coming through your windows, your your curtains essentially act as a second barrier. Like we all know, like I've got a little porch on the front of my house. We can shut obviously we're keeping the front door shut because we're not idiots. You know, the front door is shut. But if we then shut the door to the porch as well, the rooms are so much warmer just because we've had that second layer. And the curtains are doing the same thing as well. Um, and you have to remember that most radiators are placed under windows. So if you have the curtains, then that heat is going to go in front of your curtains and it's not going to go into your windows and cause condensation and these sorts of things, and flow out of any potential gaps or cracks or ventilation, whatever. It's going to circulate into your room more. So yeah, 100%. It's just like a blanket for the windows.
Yeah, it's true. And I've actually, one of my neighbors, I remember walking in and like being a little bit taken aback because I sort of opened the front door and there was a blanket just like hanging on the front door. And I
Hmm.
was like, oh, okay. But like, it makes sense because they've got a bit of a draft coming through there.
Yeah,
And all it's taken is just hanging the blanket there.
yeah,
So similar, I suppose, for curtains,
yeah,
especially if you've got like proper curtains as well.
yeah,
Just keep them closed.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
thick curtains can make a difference. Uh my parents, they sometimes they have like summer curtains which are like drapes, just like very thin linen-y things, and then they'll put thicker curtains up during the winter, and they just sort of, literally you take the pole off, slide the new ones on, put them back up, just in the same way that you change like your duvet or switch up a different tog. You can do the same thing with your curtains, but all of those sorts of acts, and this is probably a great way to lead into more efficient homes in general. Look for those areas where you might be losing heat, where you are losing I guess energy, unconsciously. So this can be, drafts, look at, your front door, look at your letterbox, all of these places that are entrances into your home. Are they working efficiently? What doors can you shut? So my house is quite open plan, so actually the living room leads into the stairs, which like kind of annoys me because I'd love to be able to shut a door in the living room and just let it warm up. But actually we find for us that it's more energy efficient for us to be in our bedroom in the evening, because we can kind of be in here. We're watching stuff on our phones and iPads and stuff anyway. We don't need to sit in front of the TV so much. Yeah, most of the warm air in the building is coming our way because we're upstairs, and we can shut the door. It's a much smaller room. We can be more energy efficient about that. We don't necessarily need the radiators on downstairs. We can just have them on in the bedrooms, and it just works out to be more energy efficient. But also look at things like plugs and what you're actually using. What lights are you leaving on? These things use minimal energy, but it all adds up. When we're talking about frugal living here, energy is one of those things I'm really like completely objective You know, like, I get it, I need it. But because it's such a need, you know, it's a bit like healthcare. I'm a bit like, I need healthcare. Why should I have to pay for it? You know, like somebody else should pay for that. And I feel the same about energy. Um, so it's one of those things, if I can make changes that mean that I can spend less, I'm absolutely going to do that. So yeah, just look at things like, you know, your lights. Also look at your appliances. You know, doing things like making sure um, you're performing regular maintenance on your, you know, your kitchen appliances. You know, like washing machines, give it a good rinse out, you know, keep it up to date, you know, do a bit of a service on it. My dad always, I know he seems to be doing this all the time. Anytime I go around this house, it's like, oh, I'm just doing the, you know, 10,000 mile service on the dishwasher. I'm like, I swear the last time I was here, you was doing that, Dad. But he's there and he's just cleaning it out and making sure it's running smoothly. And this increases energy efficiency. Back of the fridge, you've got the, you know, the radiator on the back of your fridge. Get all the dust out. You know, your normal radiators, get one of those amazing, like massive pipe cleaner things. Make sure you're getting all the dust out from there. And just looking after things like this will actually improve the overall efficiency and reduce your costs.
Yeah, it's something that a lot of people don't think about. I mean, I lived alone for about 2 years before I actually realized that my dishwasher had a filter I should clean.
Yeah.
You know, you live and you learn.
You
But the
normally
one
learn
thing
because it's
actually
like,
when
it's not emptying. Yeah.
But if we're talking about energy efficiency as well, I came across, again, I'm getting a lot of inspiration from TikTok lately. But I
All
saw a
those
video about
hours
this
at
girl,
night.
you know, she was talking about, you know, how she was putting her heat on for like 15 minutes or something,
Mm,
to heat up the home. And actually, I think there are still quite a few people who don't realize it is way more energy efficient to keep your home at a constant heat than actually turning your heating on and off,
yes.
because of the science that I don't fully understand. But my understanding is that, you know, it takes a lot more energy to heat from down here to up here
Well, if you're
than it
trying to go
does.
from like 3 degrees up to 20, that's a huge 17-degree difference. And it requires a huge amount of energy to get from, you know, 3 to 17. You know, each degree is going to be huge. Whereas if you were, you know, if you're keeping it, you know, at 19 and you're maintaining that, that's like, you know, like that's, it's like when you're pulling away in a car. It takes way more energy for a car to move from 0 to, you know, 5 miles per hour than it does to go from, you know, like 35 to 40. It's the same in your home. And this is why you know, setting your thermostat at a temperature that you can, you know, bear, and just putting it on and leaving it alone is more energy efficient. I know it doesn't feel like it, you know, like, as particularly when you're watching your smart meter, it's going.
Yeah, psychologically,
Mm,
it's not great, but actually it makes
mm,
sense because, you know, if you're worried, you don't need to set it to like
mhm.
25 degrees. Set it to 18. 18 is still better than letting your home cool down to like
Yeah.
10. Do you know what I mean? In these temperatures that we're having. So,
But
you know,
that said, I still think there's a case for reviewing your when your heating's on and that sort of thing. I mean, I'm quite fortunate in that my home is fairly well insulated. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether next door just have their heating on all the time and we just get like that flocking through our, you know, our wall. You know, it's the perks of being, you know, a terraced house. Um, but you know, you can look at the timings and go, you know, actually, we're not in. The house is, you know, there's not, well, my husband's here during the day, but he's happy to wear his onesie and his slippers, and he's quite happy having the heating off. So actually, we only really need it when the kids are home, and they're not here from, you know, 9 till 3. So we can actually sit there and go, you know, we don't need the house as warm during those times. We can drop the temperature a little bit then. Likewise, you know, if you're out when you're working, you're using works heat. Why bother heating your house? So really spend some time looking at when you're, you know, when you want your heating on, and being really efficient about that. And like you say, you know, if you are at home, if it's the weekend, it's the evening, don't just keep boosting it. Put it on, set it at a temperature, and just leave it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really good as well. Like I used to have in my flats where I could program it for different days and different times, and it was
Mhm.
really, really cool. So if you have that, definitely utilize it,
Yeah,
because that way you don't forget to turn the heating off when you're
yeah,
leaving or something as well. But
yeah.
okay, we should probably start wrapping up soon. So do you have like a last minute, well, last,
Oh
maybe not last
gosh,
minute,
like I
but
feel like
like
I need to be like, boom. This is the last one. Oh, I've got so many that I could go through. Obviously, like I'm a parent, and so I've got so many things I could talk about. And I think we debated having this as a topic, like like family, frugal living, but spend less on your kids. That's a good one.
well, there are so many
Don't
free
have kids.
activities for kids, aren't there?
Yes, yeah.
So let's do that. So
Children.
so
Mm.
many things, so many places put on free activities for children.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, perhaps they're not advertised as well, although I imagine if you
Mhm.
have children, you're more likely to have this like shoved in
Facebook
your
is the
face.
place to go.
But
Yeah. They're like, be part of local groups because they will share things. We have a great little thing that happens around here, and Father Christmas comes around our house. Like he literally drives up the street and it's, I mean, it's a bit budget, but the kids love it, and it's completely free, and it's run by a local sort of community group, and they do it, and it's awesome. But there are lots of, like, we had a local like our local park did a Christmas light switch on, and there was a bit of music, and there was, you know, like a little burger van and this sort of thing. But there was like all the kids from school were there, so they got to play in the park in the dark, which was insane as a parent because I was like, where has my child gone? But they thought it was the best thing ever. So the biggest adventure. Um, and you know, there's loads of those sorts of things happening. Look out! I like to use, you know, things like my club card vouchers. I mentioned these before. You know, we use that for eating out. We use that for days out. You can get like zoo vouchers. Just yeah, there's so many ways to entertain kids, and I think it's I think, you know, little kids, you know, like mine are 7 and 5, and actually their needs for entertainment don't cost anything. They're really quite happy. You know, like sometimes we'll have found like a frozen puddle, and they'll be like, "This is the best day ever." And we're like, awesome, like great.
yeah,
So know your audience. Like, they don't need like
it's true.
flashy, expensive trips out. You know, they can be impressed with simple things. And sometimes I think a lot of what we spend money on as a parent for our children is about almost meeting our own needs. And trying to trying to I don't know, compensate, you know, eliminate some guilt that we had, or maybe we felt like we missed out on those opportunities when we were young and we want our kids to have them. You can sit there and just go, honestly, my kids would colour in at home eating plain pasta for days. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's our Christmas holiday plans, if I'm honest. It's like 2 weeks of that. So yeah, they have minimal needs. And on that note, like they're great to buy secondhand stuff for, like, they care far less. You know, I showed my 5-year-old Vinted, and she literally lost her mind with excitement because I was like, "Yeah, you can have that, and you can have that." You know, these like 2 quid dresses. You know, like 3 quid for a pair of boots. I'm like, go nuts! So she picked out about 8 dresses or something. We didn't even break 20 quid. So it was like, yeah, yeah, you can have.
No.
She was like,
And they grow
"Really,
out of
really,
it so
mummy?"
quickly as well.
Pardon?
They grow out of it so quickly anyway, so why bother
And when
paying
she's
so much?
done, I'm gonna
Mm.
put it back on Vinted. Like, I'll get most of my money back, providing like we don't give her too many baked beans or ketchup, and she gets it all done up front. Um, and this is it, you know, like I think they're people say kids are expensive, and there's no denying that they are, but they don't have to be as expensive as I think we expect they're going to be. And it's like people when they have babies, you go out and you buy all the stuff, and you get like a little light up duck thermometer for the bath, and it's just like, you don't need that. You're going to lose that. And you realise you never needed it in the first place. You just dip your elbow in it, like, you know, your mum and her mum and their mum has been like doing for generations. So there's all these things that you think you need and you don't. And actually, they are 100% the most forgiving when you cheap out on stuff, particularly if your kids are young.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that a lot of what you say about just people buying it for themselves is true. And you know, some people get offended when I compare children to pets, but for me, like, my pets are my children.
Yeah.
And I always think about things like with cats, you know, you buy cats all this fancy stuff, and for them the best thing ever is the box it comes in.
Yeah. It's the same with kids, honestly. Yeah, you get them fancy shoes and they're like, can I have the box? I want to make a doll's house. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, so just know what you said, like, summarizes it perfectly in terms of just know your audience. Just know your audience. So what I'm thinking, Charlotte, is, you know, we've been talking for 46 minutes and we've barely scratched the surface, haven't we? So how about a part 2 on your channel at some point?
Oh, that sounds exciting. I have been threatening to do this for a while. And when I say threatening, it's more that my husband has been telling me that I should do a live for so long. And I've been like, yeah, that sounds great. So 100%, let's do this. We will schedule something in, I'm sure. And yeah, I think it would be really great to try and fit in as many practical tips as we can in, say, 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
Yeah. So what we'll do is, for everyone watching, if you've enjoyed this, go subscribe to Charlotte's. And then what we're going to do is pencil in another live. And then what we'll try and do is do less talking and more practical tips. And because we just talk, we're both talkers and I love it.
You set the
blink and you're like,
it's the point.
So yeah, go subscribe to Charlotte's for part 2. And we'll make a list of everything we've talked about here to make sure we don't sort of do it twice. And yeah, Charlotte, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been wonderful.
Honestly, it's absolutely my pleasure. I did not realize we'd been talking for so long.
I know. I was like, oh, I should be about half an hour, like, you know, and it's like,
I mean, at this point, I'm like, let's just make it a
hour.
full hour. Like, let's just go for it.
Yeah, I think when you upload lives, I think it starts getting upset when it's too long. So
yeah. You'll be waiting for days. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely, guys, part 2 on Charlotte's channel, so don't forget to go subscribe. And thank you so much to everyone who's joined us today, and for those of you who will watch us later as well. Maybe by the time you watch this, part 2 will already be up, so definitely once this goes live, I will put a link to Charlotte's channel down below as well to make it easier for you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
And thank you.
I will see you shortly. Bye.
Bye.